Sacred spaces are built to be refuges. Shrines, temples, mosques, and churches, they all promise connection to the divine, healing, forgiveness, or perhaps even inspiration. People walk through their doors expecting upliftment. But what is rarely spoken is that these places also carry the residue of what the worshippers bring in. Temples, mosques, churches, they operate in a very similar way as hospitals, where people bring in the energy of what ails them, hoping to dump it on the health professionals, the doctors and the nurses, with the hopes of returning to their homes with beneficial energies. But what is rarely seen is that these temples are not paid attention to. Not all that which the worshippers bring is of light. Every prayer has weight. A prayer of gratitude releases joy and reverence. A prayer of desperation pours in grief, fear, or guilt into the atmosphere. Shrines and churches become bowls, collecting centuries or decades of devotion, but also centuries or decades of human pain. When hundreds gather weekly in these spaces, releasing unprocessed emotion, unresolved issues, their frustrations, the walls, the altars, the very atmosphere grows thick with this residue. Indigenous traditions knew this. In Africa and in Asia and in the Americas, sacred spaces were not left to accumulate these energies unchecked. Ritual cleansings were very routine. Smoke offerings, libations, all kinds of elaborate rituals, drumming, festivals were part of this process. The point was to keep the shrine fresh, ensuring that worshippers met the divine without wading through the shadows of those who came there before them. Modern religions and modern religious spaces often skip this act of balance. Services continue week after week. Funerals, weddings, confessions, ceremonies of all pile into the same field with little conscious cleansing. The only thing you do in mostly churches is sweep and mop and the periodic removal of cobwebs. Leaders absorb much of this. Priests, imams, pastors, and even mediums quietly shoulder the collective grief, the guilt, and the longing of their congregations. Many fall ill, they collapse, mistaking it for the Holy Spirit. They fall into scandals, all kinds of scandals, sexual scandals, abuse of all kinds. They burn out, not because they lack faith, but because their fields, their energy fields, are simply overloaded. Occult teachings warn us that devotion without discernment can become a feast for parasitic forces. Entities that thrive on guilt, fear of damnation, or blind obedience can attach themselves to these sacred sites, feeding invincible forces into us whilst cloaked in piety. Whenever you bring in the corpse of a dead body into the church for all kinds of funeral arrangements and burial ceremonies, when these corpses are brought into the church for funeral and burial ceremonies, we have said the dead bury the dead. All those dead spirit disincarnate beings who accompany the corpse into the church, they never leave. Much of these dead spirits are possessing congregation members, and these possessions are being mistaken for Holy Spirit encounters. That is why some churches feel oppressive instead of uplifting, or why some shrines draw pilgrims who leave those shrines heavier than they arrived. This does not mean that shrines and churches are false. It means they must be maintained both physically and energetically. The same way the floors are swept and mopped, the spirit of the space must be refreshed. Some of them must be forced to evacuate. Candles, incense, chants, and offerings to the land itself and the ancestors help in discharging these stagnant forces. Silence, too, is cleansing. Giving the space time to breathe instead of endlessly receiving programs and events will compound the problem. You cannot have a burial service, a funeral service on Friday, only to have a wedding ceremony on Saturday the next day, and on Sunday you come back for church service. This is stupidity. Worshippers have their part as well. Enter with awareness. Do not pour all your grief onto the space, into the altar, and walk away empty. Balance what you release with gratitude, song, or light. After leaving, cleanse yourself with water or breath or sympathetic ritual so that you'll be able to give the space time to breathe instead of endlessly bombarding the space. Make sure when you enter, you leave the space with something you did not come there with. Sacred places are not immune to energetic buildup. They are magnets, precisely because people believe so strongly in them. When people go to church, they believe in what they are going to receive there with every fiber of their being. So is the mosque. So is every other place that holds sacred to the person. So when they come to shed. Make sure you don't leave these spaces carrying something that somebody else brought. That faith creates openings for the divine, but also for burdens. The question is not whether shrines or churches are holy, but rather it's about whether they are tended. They are taken care of properly, with balance, they will remain sanctuaries. Without it, they risk becoming storehouses of pain disguised as temples of light. Period.